Welcome to Real Estate Investing for Women. On this show, you will learn how to create wealth through real estate the blissful way. That means with very little stress and very little time. We talk about strategies, mindset, heart set, money smarts, resources, and so much more to ensure you're able to create the success you most deeply desire. Now, here's your host, Moneeka Sawyer.
I am so excited to bring to the show Joe DiSanto. Joe spent his childhood riding BMX bikes, breakdancing, and memorizing 80 movies, but the carefree days of youth wouldn't last long. By 13, he was working as a busboy, helping his recently divorced mom and picking up some of his own tab. A valuable lesson he learned, if you don't deal with your money will deal with you. I love that, Joe. Thank you.
Nice.
I love it. Like even in his bio, he's offering nuggets. I love this. From that point on, he made it his mission to learn everything he could about making smart money moves. It paid off. By age 30, Joe had wiped out $70K in student loans, bought his first house, and started a post-production company in Los Angeles. Over the next decade, the company grew to 30 plus employees with over $5 million in annual revenue while producing 2 critically acclaimed documentaries, an Emmy award-winning HBO series. During this time, he and his wife also transacted on 15 residential and commercial real estate properties, but nothing had more life-changing impact than the birth of their son. After a successful 19-year run in LA, the couple decided to slow down and invest in their new family. They cashed out on their business, bought into a small town life on the Florida coast. Having semi-retired at age 43, Joe's efforts are now focused on his education blog, Play Louder, where he shares a lifetime of fiscal know-how to help individuals and business owners navigate their finances, increase their net worth, and plan for a better future. Joe, that is an awesome bio. Sorry, I stumbled a little bit.
No problem. I know it's long.
But welcome to the show.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
So normally I start with, could you give us a high level story? But that was everything. I just love it. I'm sure there's plenty more, but I really want to get into the meat of this conversation because I think it's so valuable.
Thanks, yeah.
So, Joe, I just want to jump into budgeting and tracking finances. We talk about this sort of high level on this show. We've done it a lot, but it sounds like for you, you can give us some good meaty stuff on how to actually implement these ideas. So let's first talk about tracking finances. And the reason I want to talk about this is because this is a subject most people hate. They don't know how to do it. They don't know how to get started. You know, it's overwhelming, right? Like, how am I going to track every single thing? So could you talk to us about that? Like, why is it important and how to do it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I actually started tracking my finances as a young person, like towards the end of college, because my debt was racking up and I was trying to like get a handle on things. And I remember thinking to myself, I might have read a book and it was like, you should write down everything you spend in the day because it'll help you sort of be aware and then, be able to make changes. So I was doing that for a little bit in this little notebook. And then I had to like add it up at the end of the day. And I was like, after a little while, I was like, there's got to be like a computerized way to do this. And there was, as it turns out. And this was in the late 90s. Nowadays you can say, I wish there was a way I could. And of course, there's always a way you can with a computer. But
or an app on your phone.
Or an app or whatever. Yeah. Back then the main, option was like Quicken, which I still use. And you had to go to like Staples and buy it on like a CD and all that. Much easier nowadays. But I kind of what I started to like realize, almost like subconsciously, I guess, if that's the right word, is that your personal finances, it's really like a business. Later on, I actually started a business, and when you start a business, it's kind of a given that you're going to track your finances for the business. Like if you don't do bookkeeping for your business, you even think to yourself, there's a good chance I will fail. If I don't know what's going on, you can't borrow money if you don't have bookkeeping done for your business. In order to be, an effective business person, you have to track your finances. You have to look at the data, look at the results, and then you make decisions based on that information. Well, it's really no different with your personal finances. But for some reason, like there's just generally no thought amongst, the general population that they should be paying attention to their personal finances and running their life like a business. Your life is income, either from your job or business, whatever. It's expense. You want to have a net profit at the end of the year, and that is essentially your savings. And if you don't do that and know that you do have a net profit and you are accumulating savings, you're just at like a great disadvantage. The thing is, some people make so much money, that they far out earn the need to do this. But that's very rare, number one. And also, the more money you make, the more money you tend to spend. So you'd be surprised how many people make, mid to high six figures a year and just spend it all, and save nothing. It happens all the time. And that's like the saddest thing, where it's like savings could have been so easy. And you could have set yourself up so easily and you missed it. And then your prime earning years sort of like disappeared on you. And like, you're just like bummer, I guess.
Well,
MC
it's worse
Hammer
than
you could
bummer.
think about right there. Yeah.
Right. Well,
major bummer.
It's a major bummer, right? Because you end up with, I made all this money. I developed a particular lifestyle. And now what? Either I keep working till the end of time, or now I'm playing catch up and I'm not making as much money, because later, after you turn 50, you basically do not get the raises. You do not, because
they're looking to get you out of there basically,
right,
because you're the highest paid employee.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So if you need to continue to work, your job satisfaction goes down. You're not getting as appreciated financially or even like by your coworkers or your bosses, right? So there's a lot that happens. I know, because we're going through this right now ourselves. Right? We love working, but it's a very different experience than it is when you're in your prime earning years.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So you want to
and
utilize.
Sometimes you get tired too. The funny thing is about getting older, you're making more money, so you're more of a target for a layoff. And you also want to work less. So you're like the absolute worst possible employee for the business. Someone who wants to work less, take more vacation, and get paid more.
That's right.
The employee is like, I like you, but
seriously, this is expensive.
Like I got a young, eager 25, 30-year-old. I could pay half the price and will show up on Saturdays without an issue. Like,
that's right. It's true.
Supply and demand, is at play. So who knows? Maybe there are some amazing, just, altruistic employers out there that don't think that, but I doubt it. But anyway, back to your question. So I kind of just like realized the funny thing was I was doing this and it just was making sense to me. And then the irony of doing my personal finances is once I started a business, I had really taught myself how to do really good bookkeeping and like financial management just from using Quicken. Like I was actually kind of astounded at like how good I became at it just using this personal finance software. So there's actually a great benefit to doing it. If you do think you want to do a business down the road, it's like a great do-it-yourself way to learn how to manage a business. So you look at your life like a business. It's got to perform well. If it's not performing well, I mean, it's a business either that you don't want to be in, essentially. So you got to take it seriously. Or in the case of your life, you can't get out of it. So you got to make adjustments. So you want to take it seriously and put the work in. Now, that's the part that people, unfortunately, don't like to do. And I do kind of like, I've come to look at it a little bit like an area of interest. Some people love exercise. They would do it even if it wasn't good for them. But it turns out it's just a good hobby to have, right? Because exercise is good for you. It helps you to live longer. I happen to like managing money. Like it's fun for me, I guess, or I guess maybe not fun. It's more like on a sort of meditative and I don't know, it like relaxes me in a weird way. So I don't mind doing it, but I realize that a lot of people, it's just like their kryptonite. It's like the last thing that they ever want to do. So you do have to kind of ask yourself, Is that me? Is this going to be hard for me? And if it's going to be hard, either commit to it, like committing to exercise or a good diet or whatever, and say, I know this is good for me. I just have to do it. Or you seek help, because it's so important, I think, and doing it can help you to save so much money that you could probably outsave the amount of money you spend having someone else help you do it. And maybe that would be like a financial coach or whatever, or do something in the middle, much like you go get a trainer at the gym to keep you accountable. You can get a financial coach that you check in, once a month, and they look at the numbers and they kind of make sure you did your homework, and they help you analyze it, and you're accountable to somebody to like make sure you get this done. But using software today, it's gotten easier and easier, where it all connects to your bank. It downloads everything automatically. It slowly over time memorizes where you spend money, and it gets to a point where it's really quite automated. Like, I think you can actually kind of keep up with your finance tracking like in like an hour every couple of weeks, personally. And I mean, that's about what I spend on it these days. And not only does it keep you more inclined to save, but it shows you what your habits are, and it gives you all the easy places to make small adjustments to save even more, but that's one thing. The other thing, though, is, in the reason you're doing the tracking is because you're ultimately trying to do a good job towards your long-term goal. And your long-term goal is ultimately savings, and then investing, and then eventually getting to a retirement state that you can actually afford. Some nowadays the kids call it financial independence, which I think sounds sexier than retirement, especially to like a young person. But it really, I think, is helpful to keep you motivated to do the tracking if you actually have a goal in mind. So it's more important to first sit down and think about what your goal is, where you're headed, how much money you want to save, how much you're going to need, all these things, and have a plan. And then as you're tracking, you're actually looking at the results and seeing if they live up to the plan that you set out for yourself. And maybe that sounds terrible to some people. Maybe it sounds like something they really want to get in and do for themselves because they know it's a good idea. But whether it sounds good or it sounds bad, like you said in the beginning, like if you don't deal with your money, it's going to deal with you. So you could stick your head in the sand and just cross your fingers and hope that when you're 65 and you get fired and you're not hireable and you want to stop working anyway, that you have enough money and you don't end up, like in like a trailer park. Or you could take it seriously and, have a plan and see that you're accomplishing your goals every year.
Yeah.
So
I always say hope is not a plan.
No, hope is not a plan. And I'll admit, I'm like kind of like, the hard ass coach when it comes to this kind of stuff. I'm like, if you want to be a baby and pretend like, it's just going to work out for itself, good for you, but I'm going to be over here like prepared and living a nice retirement,
Yeah. I'm with you. So let's talk about if people do want to do it. So it isn't, for me, it's not a fun piece of my life. I do love talking about money. I will say I'm Indian. We do that. That's one of our things. It's like it's in our blood, but I don't like budgeting. I don't like all those things. And yet I've done it my entire life. It's part of why I've had the success that I've had, not because I get to live this highfalutin lifestyle, but because I'm paying attention, right? To what I'm spending, how I'm spending it. I want to make sure that I've got more money to contribute each year to causes that I believe in. So it's not about what nice purse I can buy. It's about who else can I help, right? Or how can I help with my nephews, all three of them, their different educations and those sorts of things, right? So so that's also some decisions about where you want to spend your money and why you want to make more money, right? So I do still budget, but I started at some point, and I will admit I don't remember. Like, so why don't we talk about how do you start creating a budget, and then what do you do? And you talked about some software, so give us some tips on that.
Yeah, well, I mentioned that I use Quicken. I'm not affiliated with Quicken or anything like that. I just like it, and I think it's the software that you can grow into. Like as you mentioned in the beginning, we owned a lot of real estate. I track all my real estate in there, and track all my brokerage accounts in there. Like, it's all in one place. I even, as my business, which I'm a consultant, a business consultant and fractional CFO, I even organize my business all in this one place. So it's nice and convenient. But there are plenty of other, options out there like Mint or I don't know, the personal capital. I mean, there's a bunch. The important thing is that, I don't think you should do it in like a spreadsheet or anything like that, because it's just way too manual. And like with software over time, it just gets easier and easier and easier. Spreadsheets don't actually ever get easier because they can't memorize anything for you. But when it comes to like the budgeting, the truth is like you could go out and like set out, set up a random budget for yourself, kind of arbitrary or your best guess. But that's honestly not all that helpful. I mean, it's nice to do a budget after you've done some tracking of your finances for a couple months and you actually see how much money you need to spend in order to live your life. Then it's a good time to kind of be like, all right, I see all the averages of what I spend over like a few months. And you kind of create a budget based on some data, from your tracking. And then you look at it and go, wow, I spent like $1,200 eating out last month. Maybe I could spend less there, or I spent $2,000 on groceries, or who knows. And you can kind of see some easy targets to maybe work on a little tightening of the belt. And so you have kind of a budget of a column of what I spent, in the last couple months on a per month basis. And then this is what I'm going to try to do this month, or the next month. And I'm going to try to tighten the belt. But you only know if you actually achieved your belt tightening goal if you track the finances and go, wow, I set out to only spend $800 eating out, and I did it. Just not going out those 3 extra times made the difference. So that's, I guess, back to the importance of the data, and if you were a real live business, that had employees and people relying on you and all these things, you would really pretty quickly see that having the data about what's going on in your business is pretty much mission critical, Mm-hmm. So you kind of, again, back to treating your life like a business. So that's kind of the starting place for me, is like kind of committing to that. Once you have your budget, like I kind of look at my budget every year. I just put it in a spreadsheet, and every year I kind of look at what I did the last year, the year before. I pull a little report in Quicken. I put in some numbers and I go, okay, actually I pretty much stuck to what I thought, or I spent more here. And then I'll copy and paste that and maybe just be like, I'm going to try to spend less on these things in, the next 12 months. And I'll maybe check on it through reporting and Quicken, every, I don't know, 3 or 6 months or something like that. You kind of get so used to that kind of thing that you just like, your spending habits. You kind of like, it's like going to the gym. At first you start with a trainer and they give you a plan, and you don't know what you're doing, and then over time it's just like becomes second nature, and you don't even need a trainer anymore. You just like, becomes part of your routine. But you have to want to do it, and again, wanting to do it, for me, it's like seeing a goal at the end of the road, knowing where you're heading, and understanding like what doing all this work is going to get, you to at some point in the future,
Yep. Talk to me a little bit about, because I agree with you on this, is like, how does it help you feel emotionally? Like, what does it do for you financially and emotionally? I think there's a huge emotional impact on doing budgeting, right?
Yeah.
There's a huge emotional impact on not doing it. So
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about that on both sides.
Well, I find with, the people I coach and help, it's like, as you get older, I think, and also, and it seems like when people get in their 40s, if they haven't been doing it, they start to panic a little bit. Like, oh my God, I think I should have been paying more attention to my finances because I'm getting tired, and now we have kids, and college is coming up. And it's like, I just like have no idea, like what's going on, and if I'm gonna be prepared for these big things. And I think it gives them a lot of stress and anxiety, and just, it's like a dark cloud, like hanging over your head. Mm-hmm. So for the people who embrace it, that I've worked with, I think it tends to give them a greater sense of relaxation around money, and knowing that they have control over it and they know what's going on and all that. Now, the flip side of knowing if you're greatly underprepared is that sometimes people avoid this because they're worried about what the results are going to tell them. It's going to show them that, wow, I don't make enough money, or I haven't saved enough money, or what, or I am not prepared. And like, I'm a little late in doing this. And that's kind of frightening. And I feel for people in that situation, of course, but the only way to be able to solve those problems is to get your head around it and then take them on. And usually what happens is people do realize after doing this, they need to make more money if they're going to reach their goals that we kind of set out. I do this, like I mentioned to you before we started, that I have a course on all this called the Financial Independence Roadmap. And in that course, I go through all these things I'm talking about. Mainly, we start by creating like a destination where you want to be eventually, like whether it be financial independence, retirement, whatever you want to call it, by what age and what you want to be doing. And we figure out how much money you're going to need. And then we sort of like reverse engineer it. It's like, okay, well, you're going to need that much money. So you're going to need to save this much for so many years. And whatever you save, you're going to need to invest, and it's going to need to make this kind of minimum return in order for the plan to come to fruition. Usually people are like, we look at that and they're like, okay, like I need to save more, which means I need to make more money, and how do you do that? Well, it's like you either need to make more money in your job, maybe you get into a side hustle thing, maybe you convert from the work you do into doing it in a consulting capacity where you can charge more per hour and then have more control over your time. You need to essentially get entrepreneurial in your thinking about the revenue for the business of you. And that's really the number one thing you should be spending your probably time on, I guess, almost even more than the tracking. Like when you're thinking about money, it's how do I make more? Because the best defense, as they say, is a good offense, and when it comes to financial planning, saving, and getting to your destination, the more you make, the easier it's going to be. So I talk about, like, on my website, like 3 pillars to success. One is the personal finance pillar, which includes this tracking and budgeting and sort of planning and having a plan and a roadmap, that I like to call it. One is the entrepreneurial pillar, which is being entrepreneurial, either being entrepreneurial at work and focusing on getting more income at your job or improving your position at your work so you can make more. Maybe getting into a side hustle to make more money on the side, maybe starting a business, whatever that is, focusing on the income piece of your life. And then the third pillar, once you're making more, then tracking your finances and saving more, you have to invest that savings in order for it to grow and multiply while you're at work and or sleeping. Like the vast majority of people are not going to save their way to financial independence. They have to save and then invest and get a good return, on their investments. So, but that's probably, the third step. You got to kind of get the first 2 in order first, get some savings going. And then hopefully, you're put yourself a little bit into learning about investing and understanding the value of it. And, again, for me, I enjoy that stuff. So it's like, I would be researching it anyway. I guess I'm lucky in that sense, though I hate exercise, right? So I'm not lucky in that sense.
Yeah.
Like exercising for me is like the worst. I hate it. So it's like, I'm suffering from that syndrome, but I'm doing it anyway because I know it's important. But, for me, the investing component has mostly been real estate up until now. I've been in the past 2 years actually adjusting my sort of portfolio to be a little less real estate heavy and more market heavy. But for me, real estate is I think it produces superior returns for less risk overall.
Well, I think the other thing about real estate is it's a really great hedge for inflation. So one of the things that I'm noticing now is, when David and I were young and perky, right? We're still perky, but when we were young and perky and we started talking about planning for our future, we had a certain number in mind. And the idea was we would have that much money, right? This is how a lot of young people think. We have all this money and we can invest it and get 5% or 7%. In those days, you could even talk about 10% consistently. That's how old I am. And then that money that we would live off the interest. And so we were never taking out a principal. And then if there was emergencies or anything like that, we could take out a principal. That was the way that we would sustain our life for the rest of our life. What we didn't think about, we thought about it a little bit, but didn't really calculate in, was inflation. So if we thought we needed $3 million today, like back then. Now it's significantly a different number based on the lifestyle that we want to make. So it's not number centric, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we thought we needed 2 million, so we'd have $200,000 a year, well, that bought a particular lifestyle that now might take $500,000 a year or whatever. That's an exaggeration, and I don't
Yeah.
know what the numbers really are, but you get the point, right?
Yeah.
So what was really, really interesting is by mistake, not by mistake, by design, but by mistake. So my dad taught me about real estate, and so we jumped into real estate. And what happened was such an interesting thing is because real estate is such a good hedge against inflation, our appreciation went faster than the inflationary numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So our values are growing. Rents are keeping up with inflation. So our
Mm-hmm.
increase in income is keeping up with inflation. I don't need to ask anybody for a raise but myself, right? I ask myself
Mm-hmm.
for a raise each year and I get an inflationary raise. So I'm keeping up with inflation and my assets are growing faster than inflation. So now when we take a look at our inflation adjusted numbers, even though they're significantly higher, we are far ahead of them
Mm-hmm.
because of the real estate investments. And I know that sounds a little bit complicated. If you talk to Joe at some point, he can explain exactly how that works. But real estate is an incredible hedge. If as long as you buy it in the right locations, that's important, and you do it the
Right.
right
Of
way. Not
course.
all real estate is that way,
Yeah.
but even with us getting hit in 2001 and 2008, we lost 20% once and 50% the second time. Even so, because of the locations and because of the decisions that we made, and because we were able to hold on, now our inflation adjusted income is significantly different. Now, what's really, really interesting is if you look at that, my husband is a W-2.
Mm-hmm.
His money has increased significantly over the years, but it is not kept up with inflation. We had on another show, I was talking
Mm-hmm.
about we can still only afford the same amount of mortgage and house that we could afford 20 years ago because his income has not increased at the same rate of inflation. They get their cost of living increases
Mm-hmm.
3%. Inflation is closer to 8%. So our real estate has kept up
Right.
with it, but his income has not. So there's a lot to kind of think about, and it seems a little overwhelming. I just wanted to put those seeds in your mind as you're thinking about this. But getting a coach to explain all of those pieces, they'll get you started at the place where you can handle it, because you don't want to get overwhelmed in the very beginning. David and I didn't, right? We just made some good choices based on advice from people that had made similar choices and experienced success in retirement, right? So you want to have somebody that you can talk to about this stuff, or listen to this show and you'll get it kind of by osmosis, right? But those sorts of things are the things
Mm-hmm.
that you look at later. And that's why I really advocate real estate investing, is it's that hedge that allows you to get to retirement. Do you agree with me on that?
I do. I do. I think real estate does all the things that you said. And as I mentioned, I think it does it for, less risk for further, for greater reward.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, I'll stop there. I agree.
Okay. Okay.
I will say though about the coach thing, you can learn so much today from websites and podcasts and all that sort of stuff, and your listeners are listening, so good for them. Where the coach helps you, is you generally have to pay them, but they kind of distill everything for you, and you get
Yes.
it all in like a condensed
Mm-hmm.
period of time, and that's worth a lot,
Mm-hmm.
because obviously time is like one of the most, valuable things we have, right?
Well, it's
So
something you can't get back. You can always grow
yeah,
more money. You can't grow more
exactly.
time.
And you want to have more information about this stuff sooner, because that information will affect your decision making and, the things you spend time on. So you want to be looking at the right things, the most valuable things, spending time, thinking about the right things. And if you kind of spend a little time with a coach earlier on, they're going to hopefully distill down for you the most important things to be thinking about and doing. And you don't have to like listen to endless amounts of books and,
It's
and
true.
so on. you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. I'm a big advocate on mentorship. And when you're talking about budgeting and saving, compounding is the miracle of finance. So the sooner
Hmm.
you start and the sooner you can get that all distilled into a plan, the longer you have to benefit from simple compounding, right?
100%.
So that's,
Absolutely.
it's like the magic pill of
Yeah.
finance. So
So
definitely.
it's just something I think on the whole, people just need to make time for this,
Mhm.
and it's like, it, and it, hopefully, I like to think that at least in any, couple or whatever, at least one of the people kind of has at least an interest and or understanding that pay attention to the finances is critical. Like in my family, that's me. My wife focuses on other things like the health component, so she's always trying to get me to exercise, and I take our our budget over her, our spending, and be like, we spend a lot of money doing this, we
Mhm.
should maybe think about that.
Mhm.
We also, but FYI, I'm not frugal at all. This is not about always being frugal. Like, I like to spend money and travel and all that sort of stuff. But I just want to spend money on the things that are like most important, because
Mhm.
why waste money on things that, aren't that meaningful to you,
Yeah, and there's different ways to do things, right? My husband and I like to go out to eat, and we love to travel. So we used to go to dives. That was our adventure, is we'd find a new dive for every date night. Now we go to a nice, a nice sit down white tablecloth type of restaurant. When we
Hmm.
were really broke, when we were traveling, we would backpack, stay in youth hostels. We were in dorms with shared bathrooms, but we got to see the world. Now we get to stay in hotels, right? The room, just the two of us, right? So you
Right.
can also choose those passions that you have. You can choose sort of how you do it. You don't
Yeah.
have to eliminate all of these things, but you can choose, I'm going to still have this adventure. Going to still do these things that I love, but I'm going to do it in this way right now so that I have access to more later. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. I
So,
mean, for example, for me, I'm not into cars. We have, like, I go to CarMax, I buy a 3-year-old used car. We have a Pacifica minivan, and like, I just don't care about
mhm,
cars. But I love traveling. And this summer we were on a 6-week trip, from LA to Seattle to Michigan, and it was amazing. And we really no expense spared. So
mhm.
that's the place we like to spend our money.
Yeah.
I do like, traveling cars are kind of the same thing. The money's gone basically once you spend it. It's good if you can find, or get into the hobby of investing in real estate. It's a fun activity, but those are assets that actually can produce income and wealth for you down the road. Traveling
Exactly.
cars are examples of things that can't. So you also want to have that balance too, is like, am I spending my money on things that are, income producing assets first, and then the stuff that's more, what's the word?
Discretionary.
Discretionary, yes.
Yeah.
Kind of comes second, and
Right.
you're prepared and have enough to spend there.
So let's talk about, you retired early. So let's talk
Hmm.
about how that was possible and how people can get started,
Yeah.
sort of
So
planning for retirement.
yeah, I say I semi-retired, or like downshifted from my, like, extreme 50, 60, 70 hour a week work down
Hmm.
to, maybe 20 hours a week. And the reason I call it that is because, like, we have a certain amount of money from our investments, a certain amount of, like, passive income, but it's not enough to live the lifestyle we want,
Hmm.
and that's, I don't want to live like a meager lifestyle just so I can, like, not work. And I like working, I just want
Hmm.
to work less intensely and, in a different way.
Hmm.
So I ended up, like, kind of starting this consulting thing. And we make a portion of our money from my consulting and a portion from our investments. And so that's part of why I call it semi-retired. The other reason is that I'm also not concerned particularly about saving more money. Not that I don't want to. I'm happy to. I will if, I'm paying attention to my finances, just like everybody I recommend does. But if we don't save money or increase our quote unquote savings in a year, like, I'm not worried about it. I think we have enough where if it grows, at a normal clip over the next 20 years, we'll do full retirement and be, set. So
Hmm.
that's kind of why I call it semi-retirement, just to be clear. That's
Hmm.
how I think about it. But I mean,
And
how you get started is
I,
doing all the things we were just talking about. You have to start paying attention, planning, and then doing the work. It just, there is no way around it. The only way around it, as I said, is to just completely out earn any need to do any of this. And if you can do that, congratulations, you're like in a very small percentage of people in America. Very, 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 very small.
Yeah. Yeah. And even those people have other things that we don't know about to think about.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. I like to say becoming job optional rather than retire. Like I've had on my branding, there's been an awful lot about, live your bliss, retire early. And what I'm kind of helping people to understand is retire early for me doesn't mean that suddenly you quit everything you're doing. Because a lot of people that are listening love what they're doing. They love their
Yeah.
jobs or they love whatever they're doing. A lot of people don't. They want to spend more time giving back or, spending more time with the children, whatever it is, right? So we're all over the map. But for me, it's really about becoming job optional. And what I like about what you're saying is that being semi-retired is kind of job optional. You could trim back and live on your retirement income, but you just choose not to. You would rather that grow and continue to live a lifestyle that you enjoy. So
Yeah.
there's also, when we talk about job optional, there's also different reasons for that, right? Either it's fulfillment or it gives me a little bit better lifestyle and I want to continue to sustain that, right? So
Right.
but when we get to that point where all of our needs are handled and many of our wants, right? Like, so for me, when I look at my number, it does include eating out and travel, right? So it does include medical care. I've needed a lot of personal medical care because I've had some really horrible car accidents, and I want the
Oh my
kind of
gosh.
medical care I desire. So I'm with Kaiser, but I pay for an osteopath. I pay for an acupuncturist. I pay for a physical therapist that's not at Kaiser, someone that I prefer, right? I will pay out of pocket to get the kind of healthcare that I need and want. That's
Right.
actually going to increase over time as I get older. That's not going to go down. That's one of those expenses that will not go down, right?
Right.
So what are those things that we need to take care of? And what are those things that we want to take care of? And then what's the cream, right? The icing on top that makes life fun to live.
Right.
So you want to include all of those in that final number of when you become job optional. What
Yeah.
does that
Yeah.
look like, right?
And the job optional, aka financial independence, like in that course that I mentioned, we basically go through, we kind of create a budget for you in the future. Like where do you want to live? What do you see yourself doing? Are you working at all? Do does that bother you, or do you just want to be no work? You got to think about healthcare and all that sort of stuff. And we take basically what would be an annual figure that you're going to need. Then we say, okay, how much of an investment pot will you need in order to produce that income from cash flow, interest, dividends, real estate cash flow, whatever it may be. So you're not just saving a pot that you're going to like chip away at. You're creating a pot of money that's going to produce, an evergreen stream of income.
Right.
But as you mentioned, one of the steps in this is to adjust that number for inflation 20 years from now. That can actually be a pretty scary step, because
it's scary.
when you adjust something for 3% or 4% or 5% inflation over 25 years, you're like, what? How am I going to come up with that?
That's right.
And real estate, those are important. Those are the important moments to like realize that's what you're up against, and how important it is to like have a plan and be ready to deal with it. That's why, honestly, I say to everyone, it's like, if you have kids, like you got to get to them early. You know what I mean? Like the earlier your kids even think about this, it would affect which profession they might go into. I know kids, it's hard to like have them make decisions about good financial sense. And, do you really want to do that career if it doesn't pay that much, blah, blah, blah. But if you get them in the habit of looking at these things and understanding how it works, it could influence, their decision-making process when they get to college and what they study and, these sorts of things. So I'd work a little bit with my kid's only 7, so it's like there's only so much, but you can kind of do. But we kind of talk about investing a lot, and because I'm always kind of talking about that, and I like that kind of stuff. So I'm teaching him a little bit about that. He likes the idea that he could have a few dollars and invest it, and it could magically turn into more dollars. Without him actually having to come back out in the backyard and help me build the back deck or whatever. So he's intrigued by that.
By the compounding aspect. Yeah.
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 It's like, it's money magic. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
So, the sooner you get to thinking about all this, the safer you're going to be, But unfortunately, what happens is people don't really start thinking about it till they have kids. They're getting a little behind the eight ball. College is coming. They're getting tired at their job. And then all of a sudden, they're like, wait a second. I get it now. I think I know what the whole retirement planning thing is sort of about. And I know that I've kind of blown it off. And like 20 years have gone by since I was 25. And I don't know. So usually I get a lot of emails from those folks, and they usually hear me on a podcast and they're like, I need help.
Yeah. And there are things that you can do. Don't fret.
Yeah.
There are
there
things
are.
you can do. Yeah.
One of the things I recommend people do actually to get them enthusiastic about this process is get a subscription to International Living Magazine. Again, I'm not affiliated with it. I ran into it one day because before my wife and I semi-retired, we were like thinking about we might want to retire early. And we're like, well, where would we retire? And we're thinking, well, maybe we should buy some real estate in a town we think we might retire in. Who knows? It could work out, And so we just went looking for like best places to retire or something. This is probably like 15 years ago. And up comes a bunch of these articles from International Living Magazine. And it's been around since the late 70s. And really the point of the magazine is to help people learn about places to retire outside the United States that are significantly cheaper. The reality is retiring in the United States is quite hard because the cost of living here is so high. That's obviously why people move to places like Florida where there's no state tax and, whatever. But there's all these great international places, even in Europe and South America, where you can live on like $2,000 a month, a nice lifestyle, healthcare super cheap and affordable and all this kind of stuff. And the people who end up, kind of really researching this are like in their 60s, they haven't saved enough. They can't work or don't want to work. I mean, and we forget your health can deteriorate on you unexpectedly. Excuse me.
It can happen on a dime. Absolutely.
It can happen on a dime.
Yep.
And they just don't have enough money to like live a reasonable lifestyle in the States. So this magazine is all about providing info for that. But it's also just de facto an awesome travel magazine because these editors go travel all over. They learn about how much it costs to live here or there. They talk to expats. So we've actually used it mostly as a travel magazine, and we've gone to many destinations that sounded super cool, in this magazine. But it also puts in perspective, like, what's going to happen when you're 65. Like, you really read these people's stories and they're like, I only had $200,000 saved. That's not going to last me that long. I moved to Ecuador and I live in $1,500 a month. I exercise more. I shop at the local fresh market. I have an expat community. And they're like, I'm so much happier than I was like in Wisconsin, like, and you're like, wow, this is really just interesting,
Yeah.
but it really, one, it's kind of a fun motivational thing to think about traveling and maybe seeing some different places. Two, I think it also helps take the pressure off a little bit and like, wow, if I don't save enough or I'm really close to, retirement and I haven't prepared, like there are options. I could literally go live in Europe in some places for far less than I could live here and have an interesting life. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of inspirational stories there, and like it made a really big impact, honestly, on our life. So I would say to people, get a subscription. It's $40 a year, I think, or something like that.
What fun.
You get one magazine a month, and it's just like all sorts of dreamy inspiration. And I think it helps you kind of be like motivated and put the whole retirement planning thing in perspective. So
I love
that's
that.
always one of my first recommendations to like a coaching student is get that magazine. Okay. And everybody loves it. They're always like, oh my God, it's so much fun to read that.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to go get that. Thank you.
Super fun.
So yeah, so we're kind of running out of time. So I want to talk a couple about what you're kind of offering my audience as far as how can they get in touch with you. I want to let you know, ladies, that we've got a special website that you can go to so that you can get 10% off of whatever he's selling and that sort of thing. But tell us a little bit about if they go, it's going to be blissfulinvestor.com/roadmap, which will take you basically to Joe's website. But tell us what they're going to find when they go there.
Yeah, when they go, we're going to kind of send people over to that course that I mentioned. It's called the Financial Independence Roadmap. And it's just a step-by-step kind of condensed process. As I mentioned, the value of paying a little bit for a course like this is that you get all the condensed steps. You don't have to read a whole bunch of articles and sort of put it all together yourself. So in there, I walk you through the kind of steps to like think about the retirement thing and what you might need, calculate a number, sort of reverse engineer like what you need to do to get there. It includes some spreadsheets that I made for myself, you know, to do all this for my own benefit, and just kind of explains and walks you through the process. There's also video, it's all video based too. So like I walk you through all my spreadsheets, show you how to use them, explain what you're looking at and all that kind of thing. And then I have a handful of videos in getting you started using Quicken, you know, if you want to get into that. I mean, I think it's kind of completely critical to success with this kind of stuff. So I walk you through how to get that and set it up and get going. And in the course, I have, particularly with Quicken, like you can have a starter template file to make it like, you know, nice and organized. So I provide my little template file so that you can start from there, and it's nice and organized and matches up with my budget, and it's all, you know, makes perfect sense. And you don't have to go in and customize all your, you know, categories and various things. That probably, if you've never done that, that probably sounds completely meaningless. But if you get excited about this and you go try to start using Quicken, you're going to be like, oh my God, that is extremely helpful. Usually people sometimes buy the course just for that because they want to use Quicken more, or they're using it a little bit and they need some help. And like, they're like, oh, I really just wanted the template file because I could see it would save a lot of time.
Yeah.
So I think it's pretty great. Personally,
yeah, it sounds
you can buy
really,
it and
really
tell
great.
me what you think.
Yeah. It sounds really great to me too, which is why I'm so excited, and really want to encourage people to go and get that. So go to blissfulinvestor.com/roadmap. And then he's got 3 courses that you'll see on his website. If you want any of them, you can get 10% off on any of them. Just use the code BLISS, BLISS. And is it going to be case sensitive, Joe, or can they just
we'll just make it all uppercase.
Okay, we'll make it all uppercase. Bliss, B as in boy, LISS. Those are both like Sam, Bliss, and that's all capital. So so that sounds great. And so Joe, are you ready for our 3 rapid fire? First of all, thank you for that. Thank you for the discount
you're
code.
welcome. Absolutely.
Thanks for talking about it. This has just been an amazing conversation. So thank you so much for that.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. Okay, good. So are you ready for our 3 rapid fire questions?
Let's do it.
Okay. Could you tell us one super tip on getting started investing in real estate?
Super tip on getting started investing in real estate. Just start looking, you know, like, so to me, I would say, well, it depends where people are, but I think your first real estate investment very likely should just be buying your own house. I consider your own house an investment. All of them have paid off handsomely for me. I do think if you're going to treat your house like an investment, you got to like look at it slightly differently. But my tip to everyone who hasn't bought a house is just go start looking, you know, like work with a realtor. You don't have to buy anything right away. You can look for a year. I mean, your realtor might end up getting a little disappointed with you if it goes on that long, but go get your feet wet, see what it's like. Just get your head in the game of that. And even if you're not exactly ready right now, I think it'll help get you motivated and get you thinking, all right, I have to prepare. I have to be ready. I know what I'm up against, you know, and I'm going to execute on it. But kind of waiting and sitting on the sideline and saying to yourself, oh, I know, I think I want to do that, but like, I don't know if I'm ready. So I'm just going to wait till I'm ready to go look at it. I think that's a mistake. I think you got to like sink yourself in and just get your head in the real estate game as quickly as you can.
I love that. And what is one strategy on being successful as a real estate investor?
Do the math. You know, I think being successful in, I mean, it's not the only component of being successful in real estate or in business or in your personal life, but I really do think you have to do the math on these things. Like you can't just, real estate's exciting. I know you always hear like, oh, half the billionaires in the world did it because of real estate. And that's probably all true, but they're all smart. They all do the math. So not every real estate investment's going to pay off. You can do the math on real estate and you can map it out for 30 years and see exactly how it's going to go under certain conditions. And speaking of this, I have a course in real estate where I provide you with my spreadsheet of doing the math. that it does exactly that. It shows you how your real estate will perform over 30 years. You can change the metrics on inflation. You can change the metrics on rental increase percentage, all these things. And it auto calculates and says, okay, well, if that was the reality, this would happen. If that were the reality, this would happen. So that's another course I have, and I walk you through all that. But
and
do
you
the
get
math.
10% off of that one too.
Absolutely.
By the way. Yeah.
Do the math, know what you're getting into, and execute on stuff that mathematically works.
Awesome. And then what is one daily practice you would say, Joe, that contributes to your personal success?
Let's see. One daily practice that commits to my success. Well, it kind of depends on the day, I guess. Some things that have contributed to my success are, I personally am like, a little bit just OCD, and I've put that to work for myself. Like once I start on something, it's hard for me to stop. Like I really just get invested. I do a lot of research, and I just get pumped about, learning and getting stuff done. I can't, in some ways, take credit for that because in some ways it's like my mind and body just like sort of take over, luckily, and it works for me. Something that I work on, though, I guess more deliberately, is being positive. I find that, being positive is so critical in life to one, being happy, but the more positive and happy you are, the more things you're going to try, the more people you're going to talk to, the more everything that you're going to soak in from life. And it's positivity improves your success. Like it really does, like gives you greater chance of being successful for all those things I mentioned. So I do this gratitude journal because I took this little course on Insight Timer about, cultivating happiness. And so that's been really good. And every night I write 3 things that I was grateful for the day and try to keep myself in a positive, mind frame as much as I can. I can't say that I'm in a positive mind frame every day. I'm human, but I'm trying. It takes effort,
It does take effort. It doesn't just happen, for sure. I've loved this conversation.
Oh,
Joe.
thanks.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was really nice to talk with you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And ladies, thank you for joining Joe and I for this portion of the show. We really appreciate you and look forward to seeing you next time. And until then, remember, goals without action are just dreams. So get out there, take action, and create the life your heart deeply desires. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you'd like to find out more about how to become a blissful millionaire, go to blissfulinvestor.com. See you next time.